Two Canadian railways feud for like a century. Then in 2021, CP tries to buy KCS. Then CN outbids them, and the STB says no. So CP puts in another bid, and the STB says, we'll get back to you on that. And as it stands, CP is this close to becoming CPKC. But the STB still needs to approve it.
What you say?
Hey folks, Dividend Gardener here, welcome back to Dividend Gardening. When we left off, KCS accepted the new CP proposal and so did the shareholders of both companies. Regulators in Mexico gave their approval in late November 2021, the merger closed December 14th, and now KCS is being held in a voting trust, which means it still operates as its own company up until the STB renders a decision. And speaking of the merger, please do me a favor and merge one click with the like button for the YouTube algorithm. No regulatory approval is necessary, and it lets me know you'd like to see more videos like this one, so thank you so much for doing that. And before we get back to the merger, let's check in on CN. When we left off, CN was at a crossroads. The STB said no to a voting trust, so the options were to continue to pursue the deal at a greater risk, or to walk away completely and pay a hefty breakup fee. But KCS said, actually, we're walking away, so we got you covered. CN continued on, but not before its second largest shareholder at the time, TCI Fund Management, would criticize the failed bid and propose a new strategic plan. And CN said, we've got our own strategic plan we're pursuing. Plus, you're the largest shareholder of our biggest rival. That's kinda sus. And TCI said, relax, people own competing companies in the same industry all the time. In October, CN CEO Jean-Jacques Rouet announced his retirement. TCI had proposed he be replaced by Jim Vena, who had most recently been Chief Operating Officer of Union Pacific, and prior to that had a 40-year career at CN, serving as COO from 2013 to 2016. In fact, he succeeded current CP CEO Keith Creel in that role after Creel left for Canadian Pacific. But Vena decided he didn't want the job, so the search for a new CEO continued. By January of 2022, CN and TCI patched up their differences, and CN announced its new president and CEO, Tracy Robinson, who had most recently been executive vice president at TC Energy, but prior to that, she had worked for Canadian Pacific for 27 years, holding executive roles in finance and operations. The last week of July was earnings week for the two Canadian railways. CN is crushing it, with record revenues this past quarter and record adjusted diluted earnings per share up 30% year over year. Free cash flow for the first 6 months of 2022 is up nearly $300 million compared to the first 6 months of 2021. And CN's dividend is now at 73.25 cents per share, with its most recent raise being 19% in January 2022. As for Canadian Pacific, its dividend is holding steady at 19 cents per share. CP's revenue this quarter increased by 7% year over year, but core adjusted diluted earnings per share are down 8% year over year. This metric doesn't factor in the KCS transaction. But CP is optimistic that despite a rough first quarter, it'll continue its momentum in the remaining quarters of 2022. In the meantime, the other Class 1 freight railroads have had an opportunity to voice their opinions with the STB, and surprise, surprise, none of them are all that enthused about this merger. To summarize, BNSF wants the STB to make sure CP and KCS continue their commitment to an open gateway at the US-Mexico border by adding exact rate and service requirements, arguing that when KCS took control of the Texas-Mexican Railway, BNSF had significantly diminished access due to higher prices despite the conditions that were in place back then. They say that without those conditions being enforced, that this merger is not in the public interest. Like BNSF, Union Pacific also wants conditions in place to protect competition at gateways. They want no adverse changes to the way KCS operates its gateways, reinforcing the importance of fair treatment, cooperation, and the honoring of existing agreements. And to account for the increased traffic, they also want greater investments in facilities that other railroads also use, saying that otherwise this merger wouldn't be in the public interest. Norfolk Southern also raised concerns about service and price commitments for the Meridian Speedway, which it has a 30% stake in, but is otherwise controlled by KCS, saying that implementing these conditions would be in the public interest for healthy competition. CSX also cited the potential of reduced competition and the effects it would have on its own access via the Meridian Gateway. But all of these reactions were tame compared to CN's. I mean, Chapter 1 of their filing is called "The application is riddled with errors, inconsistencies, and flawed assumptions that cannot provide a basis for the board to find that the merger is consistent with the public interest." Whoa, CN, tell us how you really feel. Meanwhile, CN indicated interest in its own KCS. Kansas City Speedway, that is. They proposed that through the divestiture of a KCS line that runs from Kansas City, Missouri to Springfield and East St. Louis, Illinois, which they consider to be parallel to existing tracks that the new CPKC would have. Canadian Pacific responded to all of these comments on July 12, 2022, with a 4,374-page filing that reminded commenters that the acquisition was governed by the pre-2001 merger rules, argued their traffic and financial estimates were on track, refuted the claims about service disruption and reduced access to the Laredo Gateway, and responded to CN by saying its reaction was sour grapes and that divesting the Springfield line would harm the public interest and not the other way around. CP and KCS have continued to add to their list of supporters over on their website, and in that list I spotted a few well-known dividend-paying companies like Church & Dwight, Dollarama, and Kraft Heinz, and there are a few more in there as well if you take a look. The STB will hold its next public hearing from September 28th to 30th, with final briefs due October 14th, 2022, and it's expected to reach a decision about the CP-KCS deal by early 2023. So that's where we're at right now, and unless something major happens in the meantime, it looks like everything is leading up to that final decision from the STB as to whether this deal is in the, wait for it, public interest. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to plant a like and watch these videos about the Canadian Railways next. As a full disclosure, I hold shares in CN, but my focus has always been to cover this story objectively. I'm not a financial advisor, and this video is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The contents of this video might be outdated or inaccurate, so always do your own due diligence or seek the advice of a licensed financial professional. Thank you so much for watching, happy dividend gardening, and we'll see you in the next video.